One. Hey guys, welcome back. Dr. Sabrina Solt here with my husband, Zach.
Howdy.
And if you've been watching our channel for a while, you're used to our normal videos. This one's going to be a little bit of a different flavor for you. Today, I'm actually going to go through and show you how I dissect somebody's lab work. We're going to be actually using Zach's. So we've gone through like a pretty interesting journey with his labs over the duration of the time that he's been carnivore. And of course, it's a really awesome person to use as an example because it shows abnormalities. And I'm going to kind of tell you, how I look at things, how I think about things, what things worried me, what things didn't worry me. And the cool thing is that we have data from November of 2021, which was 2 months before he started carnivore. We started January of 2022. And then we have multiple sets of labs over this past year. I think I want to say maybe 4 or 5 at least, plus 2 coronary calcium scores. So we're going to dive into that today. And I don't want this video to, last super long. And if we do have time, we'll also dive into mine because I have mine to share as well. And if we somehow don't make it to mine, we will always do those in another one. Anything you want to add before we get started?
No.
Cool. Okay, so basically I'm just going to share the screen and we're going to jump in right away. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see this. This is his first set of labs, and you can see the date here. We're all the way back in November of 2021. So this first page here, we just did a check for ferritin, which is iron storage in men. I usually don't like this to be too high because too much ferritin can cause a degree of oxidative damage. His vitamin D levels are great. I usually like to see vitamin D somewhere between 50 and 90 for most people. Vitamin B12 level, nice and high. We know that any vitamin B12 levels that are below even at least 400 will actually start to see brain atrophy. So even though the reference range starts at 232, like I said, anything below 400, you'll get brain atrophy. So we like to keep it at the higher end of the reference range. All right, the cardiac health panel. This is where most carnivores really kind of get excited about / hung up. So do you want to just kind of explain a little bit about your diet and lifestyle at this point in time?
Drugs and pizza, and
he would literally eat like a pizza from Sprouts, like a freezer one every day for lunch. And it was just like regular old gluten, regular old dairy, like the whole shebang. And he was not doing great. So you can see here, even though his cholesterol like looked good and his LDL cholesterol was like low, his HDL was also pretty low, lower than my standards for sure, which means no good fats. And then of course his triglycerides were super freaking high, like over 300. This is not good. The interesting thing is we looked at his inflammatory markers as well. So all these inflammatory markers are generally specific to cardiac. So your PLAC, is an indicator of an enzyme, specifically LPPLA2. And this enzyme is specifically linked to vessel inflammation. We also took a look at homocysteine. So homocysteine is a waste byproduct of your methylation pathways, which are your energy production pathways. This is something that we've always checked on, Zach, historically, because people who have the MTHFR defect tend to have high homocysteine levels. So we're actually very, glad that his are staying low because he's supplementing with B vitamins, which he's had to do for many years. Your HSCRP, otherwise known as your high sensitivity CRP. This is a marker of generalized body-wide inflammation that can have some cardiac specificity, but it is mainly non-specific. You can see he basically just has a bunch of body-wide inflammation here. Checked its oxidative LDL, which is your LDL actually existing in the oxidative form, and his was totally fine. But then we go ahead and we check his MPO. This stands for myeloperoxidase. So myeloperoxidase is an enzyme that can indicate vascular damage and inflammation. And you can see his is in that moderate range here. And then after that, we checked the lipoprotein A, LP little a, again, another marker of cardiac issues. His was totally fine. We also looked at liver and kidney function. So we look at electrolyte levels. We look at overall kidney function. His kidney function is doing really well. He was sitting at 86 for his GFR, which is good. We also looked at his liver enzymes. So your ALT, your AST, your alkaline phosphatase, all of those are pretty good. Again, you can see he's kind of creeping up towards the end of these reference ranges. But as he said, there was alcohol, there was some drug use, and While they're in normal ranges, they're still creeping up to the upper end of the reference range. One thing that I do like to mention though, is that the liver can actually sustain about 60% damage before your liver enzymes go up above the reference range. So just because they're not elevated doesn't mean that there's not damage happening. Thyroid panel, Zach's been on thyroid medication for a long time. His thyroid's always kind of underperformed. It's been a thing for years. You can see his TSH, which is your thyroid stimulating hormone. I usually like to see that at like 1 to 1.5. Even though he's medicated, his TSH is still fairly high. However, the thing that we're most concerned about is actually T3 versus in T4. Your T3 is the active version of thyroid hormone. It's the one that actually does all of the work. I usually like this in the higher end of the reference range. So at least 3.5, like 3.9, 4.2. Those are some good things to aim for. And the anti-TPO would tell us if he had something like Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid disorder, and he doesn't. All right, hormone stuff. He had started on some testosterone at this time. It obviously went super freaking high. Normal to see that happen. It obviously leveled out after that. This can just sometimes happen. All right, CBC. This is looking at red blood cells, white blood cells, different types of white blood cells, different sizes of your cells. This one right here, the red cell distribution width, it's literally just the width of a red blood cell. Sometimes we can see this change in B vitamin deficiencies, which his was fine, but sometimes that can just pop up. Your monocytes, this is actually an incorrect reference range on this lab. Monocytes are actually normal here. And then prostate's totally fine. PSA really, really low. And I think the last one here was just magnesium levels, which magnesium levels were totally fine. So this was Zach going into carnivore.
Yeah, 2 months before.
2 months before.
And then I stopped taking testosterone right after that too.
You did, yeah. Again, he was killing his body, like with all the shit he had to have the other stuff. All right, so the next one we're looking at, this is March of 2022. So roughly 3 months into carnivore, and these are some interesting changes. So, and the cool thing is we can actually see the one from the actual previous right before. So ferritin levels went down slightly. We had done a therapeutic phlebotomy session in that period of time to see if we couldn't like liberate some of the stored iron and bring that into circulation, which was good. We also saw a drop in his vitamin D. I'm not sure what happened there. But this is what's really interesting, is the change in the cholesterol panel. So if we just know based on his history, the thing that happened was he stopped doing the bad things. He went to an all meat diet, and oh my goodness, his cholesterol went up. Wow, we should freak out.
Which is needed to repair.
We should totally freak out. But here's the interesting thing. If we look at this, of course, yes, the total cholesterol actually went up. The LDL obviously went up dramatically, but the HDL also went up. So the good cholesterol went up too. And his triglycerides cut in more than half. So things start to trend in the right direction, which is great. His HSCRP stayed about the same. The other thing about HSCRP is that it can also be an acute phase reactant. So
I work out every day too.
If you've had like really intense workouts, things like that, the HSCRP can go up with that.
It goes up and down on my blood work all the time. So
yeah. And then the MPO. So we actually saw a decrease in his MPO. So remember, the MPO is the one that's indicated in any sort of coronary syndromes, plaque formation, also in a condition called microscopic polyangiitis. So we don't know for sure if that is something that he had or could have. There was a lot of symptoms like overlapped with things that he was experiencing, like just muscle soreness and stuff like that too. So yeah. Liver and kidney function. So if you remember last time, his EGFR, so kidney function was at 86. His kidney function actually improved, right? I thought that high protein was bad for kidneys.
Mm-hmm.
What? Crazy. His electrolytes were good. Fasting blood sugar was really good. BUN went up slightly. Again, this just has to do with how much extra protein that your kidneys are processing. But again, the protein is not bad for your kidneys. The total protein that is checked in your kidneys is literally just a concentration of albumin and globulin. So it doesn't necessarily mean anything, really. In total protein in the urine or in the blood or in the urine isn't equated to dietary protein. Like it's not testing how much muscle meat you've eaten. And if you have a doctor that's telling you that, they're mistaken. Again, when you eat the muscle meat, it goes into your digestive system. Just going into your stomach your stomach acid is going to cleave those amino acid bonds and break down that protein into amino acids in general. So your body actually has to recreate protein structures when food goes into circulation, and that's what then be processed through the system. So little aside there. Thyroid panel, not so much of an improvement, but I think at this point you had tried going off your thyroid medication, if I remember correctly.
I wanted to go pure carnivore, so I stopped all supplements, stopped all everything.
Yes, and at this point in time, I think I should note he was like meat, salt, water. Like this was strict carnivore, and so thyroid did not improve like we had hoped, but that's okay. Hormones normalized, as you guys can see here. Like I said, we just a few months later, hormones went pretty much into normal ranges, which is good. Only thing that was up here was sex hormone binding globulin, which is really interesting that this like reflexively increased, because the things that actually decrease it, which we'd like it to be lower, are usually lifting weights, increased animal protein, and avoidance of alcohol, which he was doing.
It's probably because I was coming off the testosterone, so my hormones were recovering. Because
and then no, but this is interesting too, because it still would have been in your system anyway. Totally fine on here. CBC, again, red blood cells, white blood cells, different types of white blood cells, different sizes of your cells. At this point, his monocytes were actually slightly high, which could indicate just any sort of random infection. There's nothing real specific to that. And then, of course, prostate actually improved. So you can see it was at 0.39 before, went down to 0.26 on this second review. So that was an awesome one. All right. Any comments about your time in March? Okay. So moving on to the next one, which is putting us in April. And just let me check over here real quick. No, that was May. Okay. So April next. Ferritin. So you can see here, his body likes to store iron. So just in like a month of him being on carnivore, he brought his stored iron up almost 20 points. What was interesting is that his actual circulating iron went down a little bit.
I think it was because I was eating a lot of I switched to eating dairy, like heavy cream.
Yeah, so eating dairy will actually preferentially bind up excess iron in the body, or iron in general, due to the presence of something called lactoferrin. This is another way that women can become anemic too, especially if they're eating a lot of dairy, or if you're eating dairy kind of close to the time where you're eating meat. And if you are gonna try to supplement with iron, try to make sure you're only supplementing with the form that's ferrous bisglycinate or iron bisglycinate. Most of the other forms that are out there are actually inorganic forms that aren't very, or just eat meat, that aren't just very well absorbed. So something to just be mindful of. Okay. We did an autoimmunity check on him because we wanted to just make sure there was nothing else wonky happening. You can see his HS-CRP. So
I got COVID at this time too.
Was it this time?
Yeah.
This was April.
Yep. That's why I got COVID again. Well, it was like a very light version.
I thought it was June when we went to Park City.
I don't know. I think I remember being sick though.
Okay. That would probably indicate why that's going on there. Either way, he doesn't have anything autoimmune, but this is a test that's available to run.
DNA stuff?
It's just autoimmune stuff.
Oh, okay.
All right. We can see here we are back to cholesterol. Actually, was it at this point, or I think it was the next one where you had attempted, because you had been listening to some of Dr. Paul Saladino's stuff where he had also experienced some of the wonky stuff, and you'd attempted the fruit.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I started.
I think that's what happened here. So at this point, because he got freaked out over the last readings, even though I just said it wasn't that big of a deal. He said that he wanted to try adding in like fruit, like how Paul Saladino does his like animal-based thing. And you can see that
so
really,
the fruit made me sick.
It did. So it's so crazy. He would like eat some pineapple and get like violently ill afterwards. Like it was not agreeing with him, and he was really trying it out.
It did bump up my triglycerides.
And it bumped up his triglycerides really significantly, bumped up his PLAC. You can see here his indicated the PLAC, which is the vessel inflammation marker, went way high up. His MPO stayed up. The good news is that homocysteine stayed fine. Oxidative LDL stayed fine. One thing with the oxidative LDL that I should mention. So when we're looking at LDL in general, right, and we think about the lipid panel as the thing to check for cardiac health, and what your regular doctor is probably thinking. Your regular doctor is looking at this and saying, oh my God, LDL, your LDL is so high. We have to put you on a statin, because if you have high LDL, it automatically means that you have plaque in your arteries and you're going to have a heart attack. That's not the case. We have to actually understand what the LDL is doing. So LDL in and of itself is not bad, but it can behave badly. And one of the ways that it can behave badly is by being oxidative LDL. So oxidative LDL will actually cause oxidative damage. You can see he has basically none. I see high levels of oxidative LDL in normal cholesterol people, in people who eat a lot of seed oils. It will dramatically increase this. So these people are the ones who are walking around with the normal cholesterol that all of a sudden have heart attacks, because even though the LDL might be in normal range, the oxidative LDL is off the charts, and regular doctors are not checking this. Yep. So these people have no clue what is going on in their system.
Cholesterol goes bad, it turns to oxidative LDL.
Yeah. We also, again, rechecked the MPO, and we also added an additional test here for myocardial stress, again, because we were concerned. We also did see an increase in the small density LDL. So this could actually be more implicated in cardiac damage. And you'll see kind of what happened after this. We also did a diabetes check. So A1C, fasting insulin, perfect, right? These are another thing that a lot of carnivores end up being concerned about is, how is my blood sugar? How are my insulin levels? So we checked these out. Another liver and kidney function. Again, kidney function staying nice and high, normal to have higher levels of the bun, which again increases the bun creatinine ratio, not actually causing any kidney damage or stress. You can see his liver enzymes really did normalize, and they've continued to come down over time, avoiding all that bad stuff, which is really nice. And then thyroid panel, we got his thyroid back improved, and we got him back on medication after that last time. And then hormones, again, his sex hormone binding globulin staying pretty high, testosterone staying relatively high, all things really kind of holding steady at that point. CBC, again, monocytes are back into normal range. Again, this is not the reference range for that. A slight decrease in eosinophils. This might have been after you had COVID. Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. All right, cool. We'll move on to the next one. This one puts us, oh, actually, sorry, I should add. This one was in April. Between April and the next one, which is in June, he got his first CAC score. So CAC is going to be checking for coronary artery calcium, and it's a scan that you can get. It's a pretty easy scan. Most places have a really cheap cash price for it. I want to say you paid like 75 bucks to get this scan done. And this was done at the end of May of 2022. And you can see here, almost everything is clear, has zeros, except for the LAD. So that's the left anterior descending artery. This is also known as the widowmaker artery. So this is the one that, you know, if occluded, if you should have a cardiac episode, is really the one that is almost guaranteed to end in death. So that was a fun little time for both of us to face this.
So to put this into context too, what I think happened, and I actually did a call with Sean Baker, and he agreed with me that because of my previous activities, the PLA2 is a repair enzyme, and that started getting elevated once I started carnivore, which means that my body was going in and trying to repair my artery walls. And what happened was my myoperoxidase, you saw, was really high in November before I started carnivore, and it slowly crept down. I mean, now it's almost, it's actually in normal range. You'll see in the next. Spoiler alert. But that has continuously gone down. And that is actually the byproduct of macrophages in your body after the damage is done. So that needs to be low to know that you're stopping the damage. The PLA2 is what actually goes in, is an enzyme, and it repairs the damage done to your artery wall, and that's where the calcium gets deposited. So this score is an indicator that my body is repairing already damaged
stuff that was already there.
Plaque. So, and this is like I said, this is from a lifetime of eating shitty food and
doing all the bad things.
Yeah, alcohol definitely causes, and cocaine will also do it too. So
yes. So again, we checked this to see what could have been going on cardiac wise because of the way that the labs were presenting. And even though the labs were presenting in a way that showed that, yes, there was damage happening, but yes, there was also repair happening, we still wanted to know what exactly was going on. So this was in May. So we did his next set of labs. I believe it was June right here. So just like about 2 weeks after. Okay, again, ferritin levels came back down. You were eating more dairy at this time. I do remember that. Vitamin D levels went back up. We're getting more sun. Again, we're back into June, laying outside more, which is good. And then we go back into this cardiac health panel. So you can see total cholesterol for him has been fluxing above the 400s. His LDL has been staying above the 300s. But what was interesting is that his HDL actually did come back down here, but his triglycerides also went down. So the change of cutting the fruit back out for you, I think at this point, really did make a difference in that. The LDL direct is just another way of calculating this LDL. Now, what we ran here that we didn't run before, because obviously now that we knew that there was cardiac damage happening and there was also cardiac repair happening, we wanted to check the apolipoproteins. So the ApoA1 is what's directly related to a person's HDL levels. And the HDL levels in and of itself are anti-atherogenic. So they're going to be against putting stuff into the arteries or hardening the arteries. Whereas the ApoB is actually going to be the one that's directly related to the LDL. And these are going to be very pro-atherogenic. So going to be laying down more damage. The crappy thing is that we never tested this on him back in November to get a baseline. So the other thing about labs that's important is, yes, of course, it's really great to do the labs and to see where you're at right now. But what's also, I believe, more important than that, and why it's important to like work with a provider where you can check this stuff on a semi-regular basis, is to see your trends. Because we don't know at this point what was happening, but we will in the next ones. We'll be able to actually see the trends.
I think Paul Saladino kind of covered this too, that there's some, evidence that these markers related to a healthy, metabolically healthy person, that the ApoA and the B don't really, say as much as they would for somebody who's got like the super high inflammation and all that too.
Right. And again, all of this has to be in context, right? So when we're analyzing this, I'm analyzing this in the fact that, okay, I see what he's eating every day. I know what's actually going into his body. I know his energy expenditure. I know what his previous labs are like. I know his medical history. And I'm interpreting them based on all of those things, not just what the numbers are in front of me. And I think that's really important because it can be easy to get carried away with all these red flags. Now you can see here, his PLAC did creep up slightly, again, indicating that there is that repair process going on. Homocysteine still staying about the same. His HSCRP went down, and we can see his myeloperoxidase went down by about half. So again, getting back to more carnivore, cutting out the fruit. He tried that for a couple months, and it just didn't quite work out.
I think this was just elevated because of damage that I had already done. I think it takes a long time. I mean, this is almost a year. It takes about close to a year, and I've seen that in other people talk about, inflammation. Starting carnivore and expecting everything to go away in 2 or 3 months is not really.
No,
it's a lifetime of damage. It takes. I mean, right now we're looking at close to a year to all this stuff to come down. So
yeah, and so myocardial stress still normal. Small density LDL crept up a little bit slightly, but LP little a is still nice and low. Diabetes check still fine. Liver and kidney function. His sodium went low. You're like by 1 point, not that big of a deal.
It's the middle of summer in Phoenix.
Yeah. And I think that there was some dehydration here because so that going low, that can be an indicator of dehydration, but then also his EGFR went down, and we do see a decrease in kidney function with dehydration. So normal to be expected. Again, this was June in Arizona. He goes outside and lays in the sun every single day. Dehydration, normal. But again, knowing how to interpret this. I think you went off your thyroid. Oh, you did go off your thyroid again at this time. So he went off his thyroid again to see if this time it was going to work. And it didn't quite work. Again, we know your thyroid needs to be helped. Hormones, again, his testosterone went way back up. It went down, like it had worn off, and then now it's up naturally again, which is really cool. And CBC, this was when you were sick.
Yeah, I did get sick. I know, maybe, yeah, because I think we went to
Park City.
Park City, Utah. Yeah.
Yeah, everybody got sick at that point. Okay. And then prostate staying nice and low, which is fantastic. Okay. So that was June, going into July. So July, we saw some interesting changes. What did we do differently in July? Or what did you do differently?
I was still suffering from the chest pain at night. So I started drinking coconut water before bed.
Oh yeah. Oh
for
my
like 2
gosh.
weeks, but I
So
stopped. I
this was
stopped doing that.
this was another like experimentation with regulating electrolytes because so the other thing too is yes, his labs were showing one other stuff, but the symptomology that he was experiencing, there was actually some chest pain, there was actually some arrhythmia, there was actually some blood pressure stuff. So he was experimenting with drinking coconut water before bed.
Yeah, but that also the sugar just like jacked
So
up
you can
my.
see he's really sensitive to sugar. His triglycerides go up at just like the thought of it. Again, cholesterol stayed about the same, LDL stayed about the same, HDL thankfully was going back up in the other direction. But what we can see here that's actually pretty cool is his ApoA1 went up a little bit too. So that's nice. The ratio starts to get, closer and closer to each other. PLAC starting to go down, which is good. Homocysteine, I have no idea why you're homocysteine.
Stop taking. I think I ran.
Oh,
out
you
of
were
my
right.
vitamin D.
You did run out of your B vitamins. And then his MPO went up slightly. Again, I think that this is from the sugar. Like sugar and him just do not agree at all. So
look at this sugar did to my oxidative LDL.
Yeah, the oxidative LDL went up to 16.4. Just that coconut water. And it was like an yeah. And again, the MPO went
Which also
up.
made my MPO go back up.
Yep. So myocardial stress was fine. Small density LDL continuing.
And this was just 1 month of doing, or not even, maybe like 2 weeks of having sugar in my diet.
And this is why we checked it so close back to back, because we were like, well, what is happening with the.
And this was literally, so I was doing everything right the whole day, but I would drink a little bit of coconut water at the end of the night because it would calm me. It would calm me down. It was like 8 or 9 ounces, but that's like 6, 7, 8 grams of sugar.
Yeah.
But it was enough to do all this.
Yeah, he doesn't do well with sugar at all. Diabetes check again. His A1C went up just like by 0.1. His fasting insulin stayed nice and low, which is good. Liver and kidney function, you can see his kidney function rebounded perfectly fine after that dehydration episode. All good on that. Again, still normal to have the high bun and the bun creatinine ratio when your kidneys are just simply processing more protein. Not a big deal. And thyroid started to normalize here. And we also did another total testosterone check, normalizing there. CBC, still a little wonky, not a big deal. Okay, after that, this was July, we did another CAC scan because we're like, what the hell is happening? You can actually see that the calcium in his LAD went up. So it was 139. Hold on, let me click here. 139, it went up to 179. So
which is a repair, which basically means that your body is adding calcium to hardened plaque that has been laid down previously. So yes. It's not necessarily a bad indicator. It can be over like a lifetime of doing this, good and bad, going back and forth on like yo-yo dieting and stuff. But this could actually be a good sign that my body's healing. Yes, the damage that I did prior.
And I think that that's such an important distinction, is that we're looking at the whole person. We're taking everything into consideration. He certainly wasn't laying down more plaque because the damage wasn't there, but the actual calcifying means that there's hardening over the damage. So again, probably a good thing. And your symptoms now, I guess we'll get to your next set, and
symptoms have only recently gone away.
Okay, so the last set of labs was back in July. Now about 2 months later, these ones were just done. They just came back 2 days ago, September, and we'll see how things change. So we really just narrowed it down to just the cardiac stuff for this time. And thankfully, we're back to really good stuff. So you can see his total cholesterol, again, staying above 400. I think he's just a high achiever in that regard. LDL still above 300, but we can see his HDL went super high, like arguably probably the highest it's been, and triglycerides probably about the lowest that they've been either. So we're finally back to favorable trends in this. So the other reason that I'm not necessarily worried about any of this is because if you look at his ApoA1, we can see again the trend.
Trend is going up.
It's gone up. And again, the ApoA1 related to the HDL, meaning that we are being anti-atherogenic at this point. Now, the ApoB, on the other hand, we saw a dramatic decrease of almost 20 points. So even though the LDL itself quote unquote went up, it's not behaving in an atherogenic way because the ApoB has gone down. So another reason that we're not necessarily worried about this and that we're trending in the right direction. And then, of course, the inflammatory markers. We can see the PLAC went down by like 60 points.
That's the lowest it's been, yeah.
The lowest it's been. So the repair, again, the repair spiked, and then it's gone less and less and less because less need to repair. Homocysteine went back to normal. We got you on your B vitamins. HSCRP, likely just the acute phase reactant. Oxidative LDL, I think this is because when we went to Canada for a week.
Yeah. Yeah, I drank.
We visited my family.
I had Nono's wine.
Yeah, my dad makes homemade wine, and we enjoyed the homemade wine.
And
so
I had some other stuff that Nono made that shouldn't have ate. Probably shouldn't have eaten.
But you can see how it affected his oxidative LDL, right? Like those things will affect you, even short term versus long term. But then you can also see his MPO is really the lowest that it's been. Normal range is under 600. He's just at 621. So it's really cool because I personally feel like him going on the carnivore diet was actually what prevented him from having a widowmaker heart attack, because otherwise that damage was just happening in the background and he was causing more. But you saw back in November, his cholesterol was normal.
Yeah.
No,
but my arteries were being destroyed.
Yes. So going into carnivore and transitioning, even though labs looked a lot worse, the repair that was happening underneath was far greater than what he would have been able to do without doing that. And I mean, I could have lost my husband. Like he could have stayed on that trajectory, kept doing the things that he was doing, and eventually had a heart attack and been one of those statistics. Well, oh my gosh, he was so healthy. He looked so good. He was in such good shape. His cholesterol was normal and he just had a widowmaker heart attack.
Right.
This is how it happens.
Yeah, this is how it happens.
This is exactly how it happens.
So if you notice, like the MPO has continuously gone down, except one time I think it went back up, but it looks like it's continuously trended down. So hopefully next time it'll be in the normal range, and
and so we'll check again in another few months. You can see myocardial stress is nice and low. Small density lipoprotein finally went down. LP little a still staying nice and low. And then we just did another, again, liver and kidney function check. His liver and kidney function still doing great. And CBC was pretty much normal. Again, this monocyte level is fine. This reference range is what's wrong. Everything's good on here. Oh, and then what we added in on this time was actually the omega fatty acids panel. So this is an interesting thing to check because it tells you what your ratios are of your things like omega-3s, omega-6s, things like that. He actually has a really great omega-3 index, which is actually very cardioprotective. And he eats a pretty great deal of salmon.
Yeah, I eat salmon 2-3 times a week, and then I try to eat grass-fed beef.
And now most people are going to be really high in our arachidonic acids, linoleic. Yeah, most people in today's world. And you can see he's just above the upper end of the reference range, which coming off of like basically a standard American diet, I'm actually really, really pleased with this. And again, we're going to be able to see the trend in this moving forward. And that's, again, another important aspect of this. So any other thoughts?
Stop screen sharing.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, so I think it's just cool to see that whole, and I've actually went through quite a bit of, like emotional ups and downs, just like dealing with that. But I think that
we both did. I mean, it was scary. Like, it's obviously scary to see those numbers. And, I feel very fortunate that we both went into carnivore with very open minds, and that I have the training that I do to be able to read and interpret labs the way that I can. And that, I can obviously order the labs and do these things on a semi-regular basis so that we can keep a close eye on it and we can not worry about it.
But it just goes to show that, the common thing that people are scared about is the cholesterol, and that's the least important.
It is like he had nothing to worry about in his previous cholesterol. Like if he was just going to consider the carnivore diet for health reasons, there was nothing on that November blood work that would really say, oh, go do carnivore for this. Like you might say, oh, cut the sugar because the triglycerides were high, but nobody was really going to tell you like, oh, you should definitely go on an all meat diet to make your heart like. They would have no change. Yeah. So, right. So I really do think that we kind of got a fresh start with that, with you and your health, because of all the things that, all the positive things that came of it. So,
but I think the lesson here is just to, is to check all those things and to, You also offer that too on
Yes. So all the labs that you saw on here, I do offer that, you can just go in and order and you'll get a written report from me, basically similar way that I just kind of analyzed his, like, this is what this means. This is what it may mean in your specific context. These are strategies to consider to do to help lower it. These are strategies to consider, as far as trends are going to go. Number of different things. Like, I give you a very nice comprehensive written report with it, and you can actually just order directly. We'll put the link in the bio below. And yeah, it's just because, again, it's one thing to order the labs, it's another thing to have them interpreted properly. And it's one, if you go to your regular doctor and ask for these things, they might say yes, they also might not. And if they do say yes, they still might not be able to give you a meaningful interpretation that you can actually feel good about.
Right. Yeah. Cool.
Well, let us know if you guys liked this type of content, like more of like deep dive into, biomarkers, labs, things like that. It's a little bit different than, like I said, than what we usually do. We'll probably come back again and I'll show you mine. I'm actually due to get another set of labs, so maybe I'll just wait until after we get that
It's
next
not fair
one.
because yours are always perfect.
So this is the interesting thing. I do believe that there are some like genetic variances amongst people, and you can see Zach's very sensitive to any deviation in his diet. Adding sugar, adding small amounts of coconut water, like adding fruit. I can eat pretty much anything and my labs still look good, but I still think it's a useful learning tool for people just to, again, see the variation in a female, how I look at them, how I think about them, how I interpret them. So we'll bring you that in probably a few weeks after I order my next one and get those results. Cool. Well, thank you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this content. Let us know if you liked it and drop any questions.
Bye.
Bye.